Welcome to the Calm Analytics channel. I'm Borys Tizengausen. Today is August 30th and we have a lot of interesting news. In this episode, Macron puts Putin in a dead end. 0.03% of occupied territory. That's the price of 1 million Russian lives that Putin has sacrificed. And as for Putin's summer offensive, it seems to have stalled. Turkey reveals new details of the agreements. The Kremlin no longer claims all of Zaporizhzhia and Kherson. The US is giving Ukraine missiles to strike the Russian Federation, but will there be authorization to use these missiles? And Europe is ready to create a buffer zone in Ukraine, but the main question is, on what terms? And Trump is putting pressure on Putin with new ultimatums. And how can EU and US citizens become certified Russophobes? This and more in today's episode. If this is your first time on this channel, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. So, I'd like to start this episode with a quote from French President Emmanuel Macron. If by Monday, the date set by Trump, Putin does not agree to meet with Zelensky, it means he has once again been playing games and mocking Trump. But Vladimir Putin has absolutely no other viable choice but to play these political games and openly mock Donald Trump, deliberately dragging things out in a desperate attempt to occupy at least a little more Ukrainian territory. At this point, there is not a single reason why, under the current circumstances, Putin could end this war and declare it a victory. Let me remind you, the Russians have written into their constitution the full annexation of 4 regions and Crimea. But the situation on the battlefield shows that they are unlikely to ever fully occupy all 4 regions. So what is Putin supposed to do then? How can he explain to Russians that they need to give up what they've already claimed as theirs? After all, that doesn't look like a victory at all. When you abandon your territorial claims, that's not a victory at all, especially if you've already enshrined them in your constitution. Furthermore, not a single one of Putin's strategic goals has been achieved. So everyone who says that Putin has already won, that Europe should stop helping Ukraine, and so on. Not a single one of Putin's strategic goals has been achieved. Denazification, which he declared, demilitarization, and so on. What do you do about that? More and more often I hear one question in street interviews with Russians, a question that these Russians have no answer to. They ask, so what did our boys die for after all? Of course, it would be more accurate to call them not boys, but occupiers and murderers. But who among the Russians can answer what it was all for? In 1,000 days, this is what the Russians have managed. In 1,000 days of this war, they have occupied about 6,000 square kilometers of Ukrainian territory. Well, you've heard that this is less than 1% of the total area of our country. You know, if you compare that to the area of the Russian Federation, just think about it. The Russian Federation covers 17,100,000 square kilometers. Do you know how much they've occupied as a percentage relative to their own territory? 0.03%. That is, Russia has lost more than 1 million killed and wounded in this war for 0.03% of its own territory. Can you really call that a victory? I seriously doubt it. And as for the accompanying internal losses in the Russian Federation and the geopolitical losses, it's better not even to mention them, not to tell the Russians, because it would just blow their minds. So that the Kremlin pensioner doesn't start sobbing uncontrollably. No, actually, so that he does, I'll list for him not even all, but just some of the things he's brought upon his country. I think you've noticed that lately Putin has been reading from some cards where what he needs to say is written in absolutely gigantic font. Perhaps, just perhaps, someone from his very closest inner circle will discreetly slip him a carefully prepared card with truly giant bold letters, clearly listing the truly great and significant achievements in this ongoing crucial war. And do you know what will be listed there? And that will be far from everything. Sanctions, loss of foreign markets, global isolation, an international criminal warrant handed to him for the abduction of Ukrainian children, falling into complete and severe dependence on China, major problems in the economy, entire industries destroyed, starting with coal, the automotive industry, and so on. Colossal losses in manpower and equipment in this war, the destruction of 1/3 of the Black Sea Fleet, and the heroic, in quotes, retreat of that Black Sea Fleet from Crimea. Finland and Sweden are joining NATO, more NATO presence on the borders of the Russian Federation. loss of control over Syria and the Central Asian countries, which are moving under China's sphere of influence. Armenia and Azerbaijan are taking a course opposite to Russia, a sharp conflict with Azerbaijan, and Armenia is choosing a European direction. Now, among Putin's friends in his dictatorial sandbox, there are only dictators, autocrats, corrupt regimes, the Taliban, and representatives from the African continent who came to power through coups, which, by the way, is exactly what they accuse Ukraine of. Why did you carry out a coup in your own country? It's none of your business. And of course, the European lovers of Russian oil. That's all. That's the end of Putin's list of friends. And all of this is for just 0.03% of his territory, in terms of his own territory scale. Moreover, let me remind you, the occupied territories are no longer some blooming garden, beautiful cities or fields. They are scorched lands, destroyed cities that, believe me, Putin will never restore. He can't even put his own territories in order, so what are we talking about? Look at Donetsk. Donetsk has been without water for the 12th year of occupation. No water, mired in filth and garbage. This is the so-called Russian world. The Russian world is like the corruption from the movie Warcraft, if anyone has seen it. It's that very corruption that creeps, spreads, and devours everything alive. Absolutely. Well, that's a good question. After all, today is August 30th here. Just one day left, today and tomorrow until the end of summer. So how's the summer offensive going? And what about the submarine? How's that going? It sank. That summer offensive has drowned. Absolutely not a single significant success. This once again proves that the Russian Federation is currently in a state where it is incapable of achieving any serious strategic successes. Yes, they are able to advance slowly, capturing a small number of settlements, but how long can that go on? Are they going to keep advancing like this for centuries until all of Russia is buried in Ukrainian black soil? So those fairy tales that Putin told Trump, now I'm going to advance, in the fall I'll retake all of Donbass, are just that, fairy tales. By the way, Trump can't possibly not understand this. Trump is very well informed about what's happening on the battlefield and what's going on in Putin's economy, and Putin should and can be pressured. Here's proof of those words. The head of Turkey's foreign ministry stated that Putin has given up his claims to the entire territory of the Zaporizhzhia and Kherson regions. In other words, he has softened his territorial demands toward Ukraine. Hakan Fidan, the head of Turkey's foreign ministry, reported this in an interview with the publication Haberler. And according to him, what Putin now needs is, he needs full control over Donbass. And as for full control over the Kherson and Zaporizhzhia regions, he might be willing to give that up. I have no reason not to trust the head of Turkey's foreign ministry. After all, he's not Russia's foreign minister Lavrov, who has already earned a black belt in lying, just like all Russian officials. Recently, in one of the episodes, by the way, he became very popular on the English language channel. We literally just launched the channel there this month. This episode has already gotten over 30,000 views so far, and it's the one where Lavrov's lies about the Budapest Memorandum are exposed. So our efforts to promote content to the English-speaking audience are not in vain. In fact, what I was talking about was confirmed by Hakan Fidan. If you put more pressure on Putin, he'll start backing down from his unrealistic demands. If real tough sanctions were imposed on those who buy Russian oil, well, I think Putin would already be screeching at ultrasonic levels. At the very least, his economy would increasingly resemble Arnold Schwarzenegger from the movie Terminator. Putin's economy would look like this, sinking into lava, and then ta-da-dan, ta-da-dan. So that would be Putin's eco, like everything's fine, but we're basically in the lava. That's exactly what Putin's economy is. By the way, someone from the United States commented on my English language channel, calling me a Russophobe. Oh dear, can you imagine? Let me correct you. It's not Russophobia, but a completely logical hatred of and contempt for the Putin regime and those who support it, and especially for those who are fighting, who came to my land. For them, I have absolute contempt. So last night, just to make it clear for those who write about whether someone is Russophobic or not, well, honestly, I don't really care, because I have a bit of a schizoid personality, and actually, it helps me. But for those writers, let me suggest a little exercise for you. Last night there was a massive shelling of Ukraine. Once again, Zaporizhzhia, Dnipro, Kyiv, Pavlograd, Lutsk, Rivne, and other cities came under attack. There were at least 12 strikes on Zaporizhzhia. Once again, a residential building was hit. A 5-story building was destroyed. It seems to me that for Putin, every shelling has to end with a destroyed building. And notice, he strikes at night when families, when children are sleeping, when elderly people are sleeping, when maybe there's no time or no shelter nearby, and he strikes specifically at night. And so here's a simple example for you. After September 11th, after those tragic events, imagine if someone started writing to you, well, listen, just imagine if September 11th happened to you. God forbid, of course, I'm not. If it happened for more than 3 years, every day a building collapses, there are victims, massive shelling, people are dying, and then someone writes to you, why do you have such ISIS phobia? Why do you hate ISIS? You just can't do that. That's not acceptable. Come on, you can't do that. Just a couple of days ago, there was another massive shelling of Kyiv. 28 people were killed, including 4 children. A building was completely destroyed as well. In the very center of a European capital, a whole residential building can be destroyed by missiles. Can you even imagine that? This is the exercise. Just close your eyes right now at this very moment. Imagine that your typical European or American life, your everyday existence looks something quite like this. The sun is shining, you're going about your business, heading to work, and at any moment an alarm could blare, a siren could wail right on the street while your children are at school, in kindergarten, or at home. Everyone, as if on cue, pulls out their phones and checks what's happening, why the alarm is sounding. Oh, it's a ballistic missile incoming, drones are flying, a MiG has taken off. When the alarm goes off all over Ukraine, it means a carrier of Kinzhal hypersonic aeroballistic missiles is in the air, and everyone is watching. And then they assess the level of risk. If it's Shaheds, then everything is scheduled and assigned. With Shaheds, you know exactly when they'll arrive, when to go to the shelter, when to pick up the kids. So your whole life becomes dictated by these alarms, these attacks. And in the evening, when the Russians carry out their massive attacks, you open your phone or someone looks at the computer and see, aha, Shaheds have flown out from different regions. Killer drones, instead of falling asleep in your bed to go to work tomorrow there or to devote time to your family, children, you gather your children, gather your emergency backpack where all the documents, the most necessary things are with you. Take your animals, some in carriers, some in your arms, and go down, some to shelters, some to the metro. You live like this 24/7. You sleep in the metro right on the floor among hundreds of other people. That's where there is a metro in cities with 1 million people. Well, and even then, not in all of them. And where there isn't one, people look for some kind of shelter, parking garages. You sleep there on the floor, and if there's no shelter nearby, which also happens, then all you can do is run down to the entrance hall and hope that the building doesn't collapse all the way to the foundation, as often happens when rockets hit. Meanwhile, at the front, your relatives, loved ones, and acquaintances are dying. You see young, healthy people on the streets. Not far from me, there's the Institute of Traumatology. There are so many young, beautiful, bright men and women there, without arms, without legs, in wheelchairs, with prosthetics. They should have been living their lives, enjoying their best years.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
And then there are millions of people who will never return home again. They have lost their homes forever, destroyed, leveled to the ground. Watch the footage after this broadcast. See what Bakhmut and other cities look like, the ones where the Russian world came to supposedly save someone. Now imagine that tomorrow, in the state where you live in the US, you have to pack your things. Just like it happens during hurricanes, for example, right? Natural disasters. You have to pack up and leave, but this time, leave forever. To leave your home forever. And your home is perfectly intact and unharmed. You spent years making it just right. Your parents made it comfortable too. Everything was beautiful. Everything was done for yourselves. You wanted to live there. And then some kind of human trash in the form of Russian occupiers moves into your home and keeps living there. But wait, don't open your eyes just yet. There are also frontline cities, just imagine. That's when you live in your house and the air raid siren goes off and you don't have time to do anything because there are guided aerial bombs that can hit your home in a second. You wouldn't even have time to run out into the stairwell. And on top of that, there are drones hunting civilian cars like it's a safari. Some roads are called the Road of Death. That's what they're actually called. There you see the burnt-out shells of civilian cars where entire families died because Russian drones hunt them down. So these guided aerial bombs, when you get a warning, within seconds one can hit. It's huge. It can bring down an entire house. And you know what you might have time to do? Just like now, if you closed your eyes, just sit down, close your eyes for a second. Just let it not hit me. Just let it not hit my house. And then open them again. Really, how could these callous Ukrainians possibly hate Russians, be Russophobes? But in reality, even if you close your eyes, it's impossible to imagine this for real. You just can't truly feel all of this. That's why I highly recommend to those who, accuse Ukrainians of excessive Russophobia to come to Kharkiv or Sumy, live there for at least a week, or even better, somewhere closer in the small frontline towns. Spend a week there. It's truly impossible to imagine, even if you watch all the videos from Ukraine showing so much grief, how people lose their loved ones, stand there in whatever they manage to escape in, watching their apartment building burn down. It's impossible to imagine this. When I was little, my great-grandmother used to repeat, "If only there were no war, if only there were no war," and it was already peacetime. Decades had already passed since the war she survived, the Second World War, but every time she would repeat, "If only there were no war." Back then I didn't understand, why are you saying this? It's all long over now. Now I think that many Ukrainians after this war will also be saying, "If only there were no war." Back then, at that particular moment, I truly didn't fully understand why she had said that. But now, in this present moment, I completely and unequivocally understand. By the way, my dear friends, let me gently remind you that our incredibly brave defenders are doing the absolutely impossible right now. They are heroically and valiantly holding back this truly immense armada of Russian ghouls with all their formidable equipment. And that's why Putin failed to achieve anything this summer. That's why his offensive stalled. That's why he got, excuse my French, a serious beating. And for those who are dishing out that beating to him there on the Pokrovsky front, today we have an important fundraiser for one of the largest brigades, the separate presidential brigade named after Bogdan Khmelnytsky. Right now they are precisely on the Pokrovsky front. They need several ATVs, so I ask you to join in and support this fundraiser. We've already done this together more than once, including for the separate Jaeger brigade. And by the way, sometimes, the equipment gets delivered, and you think, that's it, thank God, guys, may it save your lives and help you out there. And then they write back, say it's working, and send videos. And in those moments, I don't know, I feel like I get some extra strength. That's why I'm asking you to support the fundraising. I'm going to show you a video message now. They reached out to us directly to this channel.
The war continues to scorch our land. The separate presidential brigade is appealing to Borys Tizengausen and the viewers of his channel with a request to provide our battalions with ATVs to carry out mobile combat missions in the Pokrovsk direction. We are sure that you fully understand what kind of hell is happening here right now. We all need to make every effort to preserve the independence of our state.
Let's help our warriors. They are heroically defending us and our country. Honor and praise to them. And to you, friends, I always say a huge thank you for helping and supporting our defenders. From me and from them, you always have our deepest gratitude. And as for them, I think words alone can't express what we feel. The link to donate is in the description of this video and also in the comments. There's Privat, there's Mono, and there's PayPal for those who want to help from abroad. These links are available on both official channels, on my main channel, and, starting today, on the English language channel as well. And if you're not watching me on my channel, which is possible, then here you'll see a QR code appear. You can use it to go directly to the donation page. Let's support our guys. And speaking of the phenomenon of this war, about Ukraine, about Ukrainians who didn't surrender in the first days, but instead put up such fierce resistance that I think it truly surprised and amazed many people, despite the fact that Donald Trump said you shouldn't fight an enemy 15 times bigger than you, it turns out you can, and in fact you must. By the way, if people had followed these principles throughout history, well, then there wouldn't have been David and Goliath, and there wouldn't even be Finland today, because when the Soviet Union attacked Finland, it was much bigger, and the Winter War showed that it is possible and necessary to fight, even if you end up losing part of your territory. You preserve your country, you preserve your statehood, you keep your pride, you keep your history, and after some time, after decades, you can show those aggressors who attacked you that you can live dozens of times better than they do, those so-called victors as they consider themselves. Of course, in reality, it was a shameful war, and the Soviet Union was by no means the victor there. Now, about Ukraine and Ukrainians and their resistance. Putin's demilitarization and denazification aren't working out, but Ukraine is succeeding brilliantly. We're introducing a new term with you, deneptization of Russia, the deprivation of Russia's oil refining capacities. Today, Ukrainian drones once again attacked oil refineries on the territory of the Russian Federation. Today, the Krasnodar oil refinery was attacked. It produces about 1.5% of the total volume of oil products and, importantly for us, aviation fuel. And also the Syzran oil refinery in the Samara region, which was hit again. And this one processes 8.5 million tons of oil per year. That's already 3% of the total volume. At this point, about a dozen refineries have been seriously damaged in one way or another. And Ukrainian drones have already put a quarter of the oil refining capacity out of commission. Now let's watch a video showing how this happened at the Syzran oil refinery. The commentary in the background is very interesting. Listen to it. If I'm not mistaken, that was actually a missile that flew by. It seems, says a representative of the common people, that it was a missile. Interesting. Let's hope it was a missile. And recently there was a strike on, well, one of the largest, well, the second largest port in the Russian Federation, Ust-Luga. And now it turns out there are already results. The drone strike has put the Novatek plant on the Baltic out of commission for months. That is, repairs at this Novatek complex will go on for months. And this Novatek processes gas condensate into kerosene, fuel oil, and naphtha. So basically one of the three units suffered significant damage, and since there are sanctions, since no one will supply equipment through direct deliveries, and you have to order it in advance, well in advance. So all in all, excellent. It was a Ukrainian drone, I want to emphasize that again. If Ukraine were not only given the opportunity, but also permission to strike Russian territory with missiles, Putin would already be crawling on his knees in his worn-out sweatpants, not knowing what to do with the Russian economy. By the way, friends, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. The more of us there are, the more, well, actually the fewer of them there are. And today there's news that came out literally this morning, and it gives us reason for optimism. The US is giving Ukraine the ability to strike deep into Russian territory. US Ambassador to NATO Matthew Whitaker reported this in an interview with Fox News. He noted that a new batch of weapons worth almost $1 billion is already on its way to Ukraine. To be precise, $850 million. In addition, Washington supplies Kyiv with about the same amount of weaponry every month, funded by NATO allies. And he added that there is a high probability that once Ukraine receives such weapons, it will be ready to use them. Yes, and I'll tell you more. Ukraine has actually been ready to use them for quite a long time now. And by the way, I just learned some important news. This package of 825 million, which includes about 3,500 missiles, was paid for by Denmark, the Netherlands, and Norway. And here, I always want to say a huge thank you to everyone who helps and supports Ukraine. But I have an important question, one to which I still don't have an answer. Naturally, we will need to coordinate strikes with these missiles with the United States. But will Ukraine be granted permission to strike the necessary coordinates to hit military targets on the territory of the Russian Federation? That's what's important. Or will this be, a kind of delayed guillotine in Donald Trump's hands, one of several guillotines, and he can use this to pressure Putin? He could say, look, there are already 3,500 missiles in Ukraine. They're lying around somewhere, hidden. I'm not giving permission to strike Russian territory. In the same way, in my other hand, I have sanctions, tariffs against those who buy Russian energy resources. I'm not letting them make a move either. Well, for now, they've limited it to tariffs against India at 50%, and even then, not on all goods. So that's what I have. Let me put pressure on you from both sides and you'll give in. Or you'll make concessions. It's very doubtful that Putin will make concessions. He'll be much more likely to make concessions if all those 3,500 missiles hit the territory of the Russian Federation, targeting military facilities and arsenals. They'll go up in bright flames. So that's how it is. Well, I think we'll find out for sure very soon. But even those 50 days that were supposed to end, if Donald Trump had given them to Putin, are getting closer and closer. So we wait. For now, our hope lies with the armed forces of Ukraine and our allies. Take care of yourselves, friends. Take care of your loved ones. Subscribe to this channel, and let's support the fundraiser for the separate presidential brigade for these quadcopters. Believe me, this is an investment in destroying monsters and saving the lives of our soldiers. This is all we can do for them right now, and our help, yours and mine, is very, very much needed. Wishing us all a peaceful day, and of course, glory to Ukraine.